The mega auction for the next cycle of the Indian Premier League starting in 2025 has concluded with 2 full days of intense, fierce bidding and non-stop action, and the 10 franchises have gone all out to secure the services of the best when it comes to global T20 cricket. Absolutely incredible to see the kind of bids that were put in for some of these players. Lots to unpack, but in this particular video, I'll be focusing specifically on RCB's auction as a whole, and we'll kind of unpack that in some detail. So stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in to Willow and Leather. This is Shravan joining you once again to try and bring you my thoughts and reactions on RCB's auction strategy and the results of that strategy. Without further delay, let's get right into it. Alright, for starters, let me just bring up the entire squad that RCB has managed to put together for this upcoming year of the Indian Premier League. And we will dig into or dive into some of these specific sections and these specific players. But overall, it was quite an eventful and an extraordinary auction for RCB, wasn't it? I know a lot of fans, including myself, were absolutely perplexed, frustrated, furious, especially after the marquee set of players was done. Personally, I was sitting there scratching my head trying to figure out what the heck RCB was doing, what the management group there was doing at the auction table. Without passing any judgments, let's do a fair assessment of the auction itself, and let's deep dive into it a little bit more. Right, so the overall auction strategy, I think if I had to sum it up, I'd call it the tale of two halves, primarily because of the activity, or rather the lack of activity and action from the RCB table on the first day of the auction, and then whatever they were able to do in the second day of the auction, right? So let's start with day one. This part of the auction, I call it the anti-climax, I guess, primarily because leading up to the auction, there was so much chatter and buzz around the kind of players that RCB could go and target in this auction, especially given the fact that they were going in with the second largest purse amongst all the other teams, and having retained just the 3 players, there was a lot of business to do for RCB at the auction, right? Let's be honest about it. And there was all sorts of discussions around and rumors around who can be some of these big name players that can make their way to RCB. There were talks about Rishabh Pant, for example, but realistically, there was a high chance that he would end up elsewhere. Most of us assumed, including myself, that he would end up in Punjab. But there was a twist in the tail there as well, obviously. There were quite a few other names as well, right? There was Rishabh Pant, Shreyas Iyer, and then there was the big name of KL Rahul, who was strongly linked as a potential target for RCB, someone who can make a homecoming back to RCB, local boy, could be the captain option, wicket-keeping opening option for the team. That was from the batting standpoint, I guess. And from the list of bowlers, there were some really big names in that initial set of marquee players, right? Kagiso Rabada, Mitchell Stark, Arshdeep Singh, Mohammad Shami, and our very own Mohammad Siraj. So a huge number of big names in that initial list of 12 players in the marquee set. Even in my own video that I did talking about the build-up, or what my thought process was around what RCB's strategy could potentially look like, I indicated that they should probably go after maybe 2, if not 3 of those names in that list of marquee players. Lo and behold, the only player that they managed to secure from that list of 12 players was Liam Livingston, of all players. And he came to RCB at a price of, I think it was 8.25 crores or something around that range, which I believe was the cheapest amongst all the 12 marquee players, if I'm not mistaken, or the second cheapest, I guess, overall. But what a shocker it turned out to be, right? I mean, the last player to come out of that marquee 2 set was KL Rahul, And RCB initially started bidding for him as well, but after 10 or 11 crores, they decided to stop bidding. My assumption was that they will probably come in later once, the other teams have done or finished their round of biddings, and then they'll kind of come in and then steal, put in the highest bid at the end and then take Rahul away. But lo and behold, Rahul, goes to Delhi for just a mere 14 crores, which is probably much lesser than what most of us would have expected him to go for, especially given the likes of Rishabh Pant and Shreyas Iyer going for 26.75, 27 crores, ridiculously high numbers. But I think in some ways you could probably justify that to some extent. But the fact that RCB did not go for KL Rahul left a bunch of us stunned, confused and shocked. Including myself, I had absolutely no idea what to expect from the auction at that point of time. They came after the end of day one. The management team came after the end of day one and kind of shared some thoughts around what they were trying to do. But before that, let's also talk about what other players they managed to pick up on day one, right? I mean, they went after Phil Salt and secured him as the first wicket-keeping option and the opening batting option, which I think was a great buy. 10 or 11 crores, somewhere in that range. I think a tad bit expensive, I guess, but it just felt like RCB had come with a specific list of players that they wanted to go after, and they weren't hesitating to go after them, right? And the next couple of players that they picked up were guys like Jitesh Sharma and I think Josh Hazelwood, right? So those are the next two big names that they picked up on day one. Good names, solid names, right? I think they were trying to fill specific roles and specific pieces within that puzzle, but again, not a whole lot of action considering the purse that they had heading into the auction. Not a whole lot of eventful things happening from an RCB standpoint on day one. So obviously that kept a lot of us confused and frustrated. But come day two, it kind of became a little bit more evident that they had some sort of a clear strategy and a vision in mind, which was good to see. Again, as I mentioned, right, I think at the end of day one, Mo Bobart, the director of cricket for RCB, came out and made a statement for the RCB channel that they were looking to go after specific sets of players in the right price range, and he did mention it very, very clearly. Like, look, RCB has been trophyless for 17 seasons now, and one pattern that has been common across all those 17 seasons is the fact that we have always traditionally gone after 2 or 3 big name players and spent a huge amount of money on these kinds of players, and that puts us in a hole when it comes to filling up or bolstering the rest of this team and the rest of the squad, and we have always had to make some big compromises in some specific areas, right? You go back all the way to the time when Kohli, ABD and Chris Gayle were playing together, but when you think of that team there, the playing 11, those were the only 3 names that technically stood out, right? Most of the others, especially the bowling department, they were always just going to be some fillers in there, 1 or 2 decent bowling options maybe, but then you were always looking around trying to find who your 5th bowler is going to be or who your 6th and 7th bowling options might be if you needed to change things up a little bit and utilize some additional options. Same thing even over the last few years as well, in the KGF era, right? We had Kohli, Glenn Maxwell and Faf du Plessis. Again, those were the big names, but when it came to the bowling department, not really a whole lot of investment there. We're kind of making do with, again, I don't want to call them bits and pieces bowlers. They are good quality bowlers, but when it comes to the IPL, you need to have a different level of class and pedigree to be able to really assert yourself and dominate the batting teams, right? But you saw what happened last year, right? Our bowling options were guys like Reece Topley at the top of the innings, and then we've gotten like a few other overseas options like Alzari Joseph, 10.5 or whatever crores that we paid for him. That obviously fell absolutely flat. You saw the likes of Mohammad Siraj, again, not having the best of seasons last year. So that kind of really had a massive impact on what we were able to do as a team. And just the mere fact that we were able to still push through and make that late surge and find our way into the playoffs is a miracle in itself, right? Let's be very honest about that. So that has obviously been some massive, holes, glaring holes or gaps in the strategy for the team. So it was kind of interesting and very refreshing, I guess, to some extent, to hear the strategy being revised a little bit, and the team kind of sticking to this philosophy of not spending too much or not overspending on specific players, but then going after some key people to fill specific roles, and whoever they thought would be a player that they can get within that budget to fill a specific role in the team, they were okay with it. So that was definitely refreshing to see. And then at the end of day 2, with some of the buys that they were able to make, I think we have kind of managed to put together a reasonably good squad, right? I don't want to get carried away either way, on either side, right? There is going to always be one side of the wagon which will, always continue criticizing the management team. And I'll be very honest, midway through day 1, once the marquee set was done, I was absolutely fuming with what the team was doing there. But when you think about it, and when I'll walk through the possible starting 12 for this team as well, and when you look through that list, it is absolutely not as bad as some of the folks are making it out to be, which is great. But on the flip side, I don't want to completely contradict their views as well, or disregard those opinions, and I don't want to come out and say that this is an absolute world-class team and this is going to be a team that beats every other squad in this tournament. No, that's not the case either. There are definitely a few holes still in the lineup and in the overall squad, so we will talk about those as well. But all in all, as I said, I think it was a day of two halves, or it was a tale of two halves. Day 1 completely was the shock and awe kind of a thing, where I think everyone was kind of blindsided by what RCB was trying to do. But heading into day 2, I think we really got a glimpse into what that strategy was, and a lot of it kind of came to fruition on day 2, and I think they were able to pick up some really, really good buys on the second day. Right. So as I mentioned, it's a change in the direction and the philosophy where this team is trying to head towards over the next 3 years. Obviously, the big key highlight here is the fact that there doesn't seem to be any focus on brand value or brand name of the players anymore. Right. So when you look through the roster that we have assembled, barring Virat Kohli, not a single other player in that entire squad has a massive, brand value, brand name, or fan following as such. I mean, obviously, these are all excellent players. They all come with special skills and they do have fan following. I'm not denying that, but I'm saying in the grander scheme of things, compared to some of the other big names in the tournament overall, I think these are some low-profile players flying under the radar, and not really big, crowd pullers, if I may call them so. Which again is a refreshing thought and a refreshing take on things. I think as RCB fans, we've kind of fallen into this pattern of always trying to look or chase, one or two massive names, some key marquee players, and then bring them back, or bring the services of those players into the squad, which boosts not only the specific areas of strengths within the team, but also brings a lot of additional brand value and recognition to the franchise. So it's a very, very different take now, complete left field switch that they've done, where they've not really focused on brand names at all. Virat Kohli is the only linchpin brand attractor or the brand value for this team at this point of time for the next 3 years. So let's all kind of come to terms with the fact. I think obviously, look, Virat Kohli in himself is more than enough to sustain this franchise from a brand perspective as well for the next 3 years. But I think it's a very bold move and a brave move from the management team to try and move away from that impression that a lot of fans, pundits, the world has about RCB, and kind of move away from that glitz and glamour kind of a aura around RCB, and really focus on people basically doing specific roles and doing parts of the job for the team, right? No longer do we have to rely on just 2 or 3 massive names to do the bulk of the lifting for the team, or at least that's the impression that I get when I look through this squad. Again, this may or may not necessarily be a really good thing from a branding perspective for the franchise, but I think they have kind of set their priorities on trying to make an impact in the tournament, which I think is a great sign to see. So I'm really happy with that approach, at least, right? But what does this mean for us as a squad? Basically, this means that it is going to be an environment where the sum has to be greater than its parts, right? Every person in that starting 12 or in the squad as a whole will have to pull their weight at different points during the games and at different points during the tournament as well. You cannot simply rely on just one Virat Kohli to kind of drag you through the entire season, or just 2 or 3 key players to pull you through the entire season. Everyone in the squad has been picked for a particular reason, to fit in a specific role in that batting or the bowling lineup, and they will have to come good, and they will have to make key contributions throughout the tournament for us to be able to be successful as a franchise over the next 3 years. Again, very, very different from what we've done previously, but I'm very happy with the fact that they're trying to take this approach. So all in all, if I had to rate RCB's auction performance overall, I'd probably rate it a 7.5 out of 10. Again, I'll kind of walk through some of the key strengths of this team and some big weaknesses that still exist. But looking at the entire big picture, I would probably rate it as a 7.5 out of 10. Cool. Right, so let's look at the possible starting 12 for this team then. So Kohli obviously starts as the opener. Phil Salt, the dashing English opener that they've picked up, has done incredibly well over the last couple of seasons in the IPL. Was part of the title-winning KKR squad last year. Made a big impact on the tournament. Him and Sunil Narine opening, I think they changed the course of many games right at the top. And I think he is an incredible addition to this team. So I'm very, very happy with that opening pair of Kohli and Salt. At one down, I put in Rajat Patidar. I think traditionally, even though over the last couple of years he's become famous as the spin dominator, I think given that he is their second retention this time around, I think RCB is expecting more from him and will place more responsibility on his shoulders to be able to come in at the drop of the first wicket. Could very well be in the power play or very early in the innings and still kind of make an impact against the pacers in the power play as well, and then kind of settle in and then take on the spinners in the middle overs. So potentially I've put in Rajat Patidar at number 3. Liam Livingston is at number 4. Again, it's a position that he's kind of made his own in the English setup as well. I think it's a great position for him to come in, and again, someone who can dominate the spinners very aggressively. So I think Rajat Patidar and Liam Livingstone at that 3 and 4 positions can really make a huge difference in the middle overs for RCB. At number 5, I've slotted in Jitesh Sharma. Exciting talent, brings a lot to the table as well. Another wicket-keeping option alongside Phil Salt. The fact that they've paid big money for him, I think he went for 11 crores. It's a great sense of responsibility, but again, they have identified specific role for him, and they wanted to make sure that they address specific gaps in the lineup, and they've specifically targeted Jitesh Sharma to be able to help with a particular role there. So he slots in at number 5. Number 6 is Tim David, someone we picked up very late in the auction for just 3 crores, and I think that's an absolutely fantastic buy for just 3 crores. Especially someone who will be playing half his matches at the Chinnaswamy Stadium. I think he has a lot to offer with the bat. So I think, a great addition, and can also, roll his arm over and put in a couple of overs. Although I think there are a few other all-rounders ahead of him in the team who we can rely upon for the bowling part at least. So I'm looking at Tim David as primarily a batting option, but again, someone who can come in late in the order and turn the tide and finish games for RCB, right? Between Jitesh Sharma and Tim David, those are the 2 key players who will be entrusted with that responsibility of accelerating in those last 3-4 overs when you're playing the first innings, or basically chase big targets down in those last few overs when you're chasing them down. So that is number 6, Tim David. Number 7, I've slotted in Krunal Pandya, again at 5.75 crores, I think it was. Excellent buy. Look, a lot of people might have questions around why Krunal Pandya ahead of someone like Washington Sundar, for example. I still feel like Krunal Pandya probably offers a little bit more with the bat compared to Washington Sundar, especially in the T20 format. I have mentioned this in some of my previous videos as well. I am yet to see the kind of impact that Sundar can have with the bat in the T20 format. Red ball, he's absolutely fantastic. Even in ODI format, I think he's a very, very effective batsman. But T20, I think he still needs to prove a little bit more. And even from the bowling side, I think Krunal Pandya has a baffling economy of under 7.5 or 8 runs per over through his entire IPL career. This is having played a ton of a big chunk of his career at a stadium like the Wankhede. Last 2-3 years he's been playing at Lucknow at the Ekana Stadium, which does favor some of the slower bowlers. Agreed, but I think despite that, having a career average of or a career economy of less than 8, having spent so many seasons at Mumbai, that kind of is a good testament to the kind of experience and skill that he has. Always kind of slips under the radar, but will come in and bowl those tight 1 or 2 overs when the team needs to curb things down a little bit against the opponent. So I think he's a very, very handy player. And the fact that he's been someone who's flexible enough to move up and down the order, I think RCB has all the flexibility to use him as a floater anywhere between number 3 and number 7. And again, he's the only current left-hander in my lineup at the top in that list of batsmen. So I think he will probably play a very interesting and a key role, switching or floating up and down in the order as and when the team needs to take on specific situations or scenarios in the game. Right, let's come to the bowling department now. Starting at number 8, I have Bhuvneshwar Kumar. What an excellent buy again. I think a lot of people will probably write off Bhuvneshwar Kumar as someone who's become a little jaded now over the last couple of years. Yeah, he's not been up to his potential. He's not played up to his potential over the last couple of seasons. But he is still, I think, 34 years old or somewhere around that. I think he still has a lot to offer. Again, if he can keep himself fit and come really fit into the IPL, I think he has a lot to offer, especially with the new ball. Can come in and even bowl up to 3 overs in that power play. So I think it's a great option to have. He's a genuine wicket-taking option in the power play. So I'm really glad that RCB went after someone like him. Next up, I've put in Rafiq Salam. Rafiq Salam went to RCB for 6 crores, which is a big amount. But I think we've seen glimpses of what he was able to do with the Delhi Capitals last year. Has good pace and has excellent variations and Yorkers as well, which he's been using very effectively in some of the games that he's played recently for India A and a couple of other tournaments as well. So very promising, and there's a reason why he went for 6 crores was because there was at least one more franchise who were interested in buying him at that price as well. So that kind of tells you that he was on the radar of a few teams. But I'm glad that he was picked up by RCB. I think he gives that additional flair and that variety that we need in the death overs, alongside some of our other pace bowlers. At number 10, I have Josh Hazlewood. Again, great pick overall. 12.5 crores seems a little bit overpriced for me, to be honest. That is where I feel a little bit weird. I think that was probably one of the areas where they missed out, is the fact that at 12.5 crores, they could have even, pushed for someone like Mitchell Starc or Kagis or Rabada, for example, because those guys went for lower than that price in that marquee set, right? But again, probably comes down to the dynamics of the auction. Maybe they were hoping or planning to get Hazlewood for a lesser price, and they didn't want to spend that much money upfront in the marquee set and then kind of leave them short-handed in the rest of the auction, which is why they probably didn't go beyond a certain number for the likes of Rabada or Mitchell Starc. But at the end of it, the way it played out, they had to shell out 12.5 crores for Hazlewood. Again, excellent player, very, very tough to get away, will give you tight economical spells, and chip in with wickets here and there as well. Can probably bowl 1 over in the death or so, but again, not like a go-to death over specialist kind of a bowler, right? I think that's where we've probably missed the trick a little bit. I would have felt more comfortable if we had one leader to kind of drive the pace attack Whereas now we have Bhuvneshwar Kumar and Hazelwood, which are again excellent picks. I'm absolutely not denying that, but it just feels like that attack kind of is lacking a tooth, or here and there lacking some teeth, right? Basically, I just feel like someone like a Rabada or a Mitchell Stark would have been an excellent leader of the pack, and ably supported by guys like Bhuvneshwar Kumar and Yash Dayal and all of those guys. I think that would have been an even more potent pace attack. But having said that, with the strategy that RCB went ahead with, I think Hazelwood is still a good option. Again, he's like a 4-over bank. Usually, goes for 30, 32 runs, 35 runs at top, and, sneaks in and picks up a couple of wickets here and there as well. So I think he's still a good option to have. So that's Hazelwood at 10. Yash Dayal at number 11, the other retention from last year, excellent. He's been growing from strength to strength. Had a horrible season a couple of years ago, but just the mental toughness to be able to bounce back from that and have the kind of season that he did. Not a lot of people probably just remember him for that final, death over bowling that he did against CSK in that last game that we had to win to make our way into the playoffs. But for anyone who was following the season very keenly, I think Yash Dayal was probably the only bowler who was consistently doing well for RCB throughout the season. When you had guys like Siraj, Topley, Alzari Joseph, Lockie Ferguson, etc. last season, Vijay Kumar Vaishak, all of these guys did well in patches, but there were games where they were absolutely blown out of the water, right? But Yash Dayal quietly used to come in the power play, swing the ball both ways, pick up some wickets here and there, and even at the death was very, very effective. Yes, he did go for a few runs in some of the games, but he was still able to find ways, and he was the only one who looked to be trying or doing different things and brought in those variations. So I think he's been improving and growing over time, and I think it was a great deal that we did to retain him, and I think he'll have a major role again to play this year, being a part of that pace attack. And lastly, at number 12, I have Suya Sharma, the one frontline leg spinner that we have picked up. Again, I think Suyash has a lot to offer, has a lot of potential and talent, but again, this is probably another area where I feel like we missed the trick by not bringing in another more experienced leg spinner, right? Given he's the only big name leg spinner, when I say big name, at least a known entity, I guess, being the only leg spinner who will be the leader of the spin attack for the team, I think that's a lot of responsibility on him. So it will be a little interesting to see how he does, especially on a wicket like Chinnaswamy. Yes, I think he'll be more than a handful when he is, when we're playing away from home in some of the more spin-friendly wickets. But he did exceptionally well for KKR a couple of years ago when, the pitch was doing a little bit there. And he had the likes of Varun Chakravarti and Sunil Narayan partnering with him and really squeezing the runs from the other end as well, and it made his job a little bit easier. So it'll be very interesting to see how he adapts to the Chinnaswamy environment and being the lead spin bowler, which he hasn't been so far in the IPL. So yeah, that'll be interesting to see as well. Right, so that is the starting 12, probable 12, the way I look at it right now. And again, 12 because I'm including the impact player as well. And we can pick and choose to sit out one of the bowlers during the batting and vice versa. However, we need to make the combination happen. But just want to quickly talk about some of the other key buys that we had in the auction as well. Some of these backup players potentially who can come in and do a decent job for the team. From the overseas space department, Nuwan Tushara is an excellent signing again. Came in for very cheap. Lungi Engidi came for base price as well. Those were some good buys. Tushara, I think, brings another additional variety or a dimension to this attack, and it'll be great to see, depending on how the team combination kind of sets up, he could get a look in as the second overseas pacer alongside Josh Hazelwood as well. So that'll be exciting to see. Junior Malinga, to see how he does. He's been doing fairly well across the board in different tournaments, in different T20 competitions and for Sri Lanka as well. But I think he'll continue growing over the next 3 years, so it's an exciting and promising talent to have. Ngidi again just as a backup. If one of these two overseas bowlers that we have, Hazelwood and Tushara, are injured or they become unavailable, at least we have a little experience in the form of Ngidi there. Another interesting buy in the auction was Bethel. Jacob Bethel, I think he's someone who's kind of burst onto the scene over the last few months, not even a year, I would say, just the last few months at the international scene. I think he's created some huge waves in terms of the batting prowess that he's been able to show. Left-hander, plays in the middle order, has some exceptional and clean hitting. Someone who offers a little bit with the ball as well, but I think that is probably a little bit raw still, given the fact that the guy is still just 21 years old. He'll continue developing his craft and becoming an even bigger and a better player, but I think he's probably an excellent pick to bring into the squad again. The way I see it, I don't anticipate him being a part of the starting 12 when the season begins, but he would be an excellent replacement for someone like Livingston or even a Phil Salt, if need be, when if those players are unavailable for any games for whatever reason. So that's a very, very interesting addition. Romario Shepherd we picked up at the base price of 1.5 crores. Again, excellent power hitter to come in and close games off. I think he'll be kind of a backup for Tim David. Could come into the squad if Tim David doesn't really get going quickly as well. So I think that's an excellent option that we have as well, and a medium pace bowling option too. So I think he adds a lot of value from that point of view. A few other names from a batting standpoint, domestic Indian batters. We picked up Devdutt Padikkal towards the very end. He probably came like once or twice, went unsold, and then eventually when RCB still had like a little money left, they went after Devdutt Padikkal and got him for 2 crores. I think a decent option. I think he's not really set the world on fire when it comes to his batting performances over the last 2-3 years. Didn't really find his place at LSG nor at Rajasthan Royals. So I definitely don't anticipate him being in the starting 12 for the team at least. But again, could be a potential backup for one of the Indian domestic batters like Rajat Patidar, for example. If he's not available, then DDP probably comes in there. The other player that we picked up, Swastik Chikara, top scorer in the UP T20 league as well. Exciting big hitter. Time will tell whether he's cut out for the IPL or not. But let's see. I think it will depend on how he grows over the next year or so. This first season in 2025, I really don't anticipate him getting too much game time unless things are going horribly wrong with some of the other Indian players and we really need to bring in another hitter. But I think if he's able to hone his skills a little bit more and grow even further as a batter, I think we can potentially look at him making an impact in 2026 and beyond, right? So, but still, it's good that we have secured his services. Again, another big hitter. And then just talking about a couple of other domestic all-rounders that we picked up. Swapnil Singh, that lucky man who turned RCB's fortunes around last season. He's been retained at base price, which is again great to see. Excellent, in the power play, for example, can sneak in a couple of overs and pick up a wicket here and there as well with his left arm orthodox spin, and can offer a little bit with the bat. Again, I'm not still very convinced with his batting abilities, but gives it his all, and I think he's still a good option to have. I think again he'll be a backup for someone like Krunal Pandya, so I don't really anticipate him being in the starting 12 right from the get-go, despite having a very fantastic second half of the season for RCB last year. I don't anticipate him being in the starting 12 to begin with. They've also picked up Manoj Bhandage again, a local boy from Karnataka, has done incredibly well in the Karnataka T20 league as well. Has been scoring runs for fun, very, very aggressive when it comes to his hitting abilities, and can bowl a couple of overs in between too. So they've picked up him as an all-rounder as well, again at base price. So I think they've done some decent buys for some of these positions as backup players, which is good to see. Right, so that brings us to the final question, I guess. Who is going to be RCB's captain? Look, I think the answer is fairly obvious at this point. Looking at the roster that we have assembled, there is no other option than the king himself, Virat Kohli, to take up the mantle of captain once more. I do have mixed feelings about this, I guess, to be honest, because in the past, when he was leading RCB previously, I was never really a big fan of his tactics overall, or some of the decisions that he would take on field with respect to some of the bowling changes particularly. But look, I'm sure this is a decision that they have collectively and consciously made well before even the retention deadline. I am pretty sure that decision was made already, and only based on that has the management kind of come up with a strategy for whom to pick in the auction. And based on the folks that we have picked up, I think it's very, very obvious that Virat Kohli is going to be the captain. They haven't officially named him the captain yet, but I'm sure it will happen in due course. Remains to be seen if it's something that they will announce sometime relatively soon, or if they want to hold on to that announcement for an event like the Unbox event that they do every year now ahead of the season starting. So that remains to be seen. But yeah, let's see. Look, as I said, haven't really been a big fan of how he approaches the IPL captaincy. As an international captain, he's been wonderful, but there it's a different kind of a challenge. You already have the best of the best from the country playing for you, and it's more about kind of bringing them together and just trying to impose yourself on the opposition. But here in the IPL, when you have that squad of 11 or 12 players, there are always going to be 2 or 3 players in that list who are not necessarily at the same elite skill level as some of the other players in the lineup. Those domestic Indian players, those uncapped players, for example. And I feel like that is where even Kohli in the past hasn't necessarily shown a whole lot of faith or patience with some of these lesser known names, and has always been chopping and changing the team lineup typically. So I hope that is something that he's learned from in the past. And look, given the fact that he's been away from captaincy from any format for the last 3-4 years now, I think that hopefully would have given him a little bit of a different perspective. And he himself has evolved as a person over the last several years. So he's become a little bit more mature and more calm about certain things. And look, don't get me wrong, he's still as aggressive and fierce as ever on the field, but I think in general he seems a little bit more sorted as an individual these days, and I'm hoping that maturity can kind of translate into better things for him as a captain of an IPL franchise. But look, someone like Virat Kohli, if he has come up and put his hand up and said, hey look, I want to captain this franchise for the next 3 years, there is not a single person in that franchise or in that management group who would say no to that. Credit to him if he wants to take that up. That's a good sign, if you ask me, because I think he probably has that hunger and that intensity again. Not that it was lacking over the last 3 years, but I think this time again he wants to kind of grab the bull by the horns and really make that one final push, if I may call that so, over the next 3 years to kind of pretty much throw everything at it, including the kitchen sink, and try and see how he can help bring that first title home for RCB. Given that it could potentially be his last 3 years with the franchise, depending on what he wants to do after that. But having said that, I think there is that is an exciting prospect of him being back as a captain. It'll definitely make for some exciting viewership. But all of that entertainment aside, I think it's kind of nice to see what he'll bring to the table. I'm really hoping that he has changed a little bit with respect to his captaincy style overall, and especially, like I said, with those younger players and the newer players, I think him and the leadership group as a whole needs to show a little bit more faith in them and give them that run of games to really shine and come through, which hasn't happened in the past. And not just with Kohli, right? Even during Faf's captaincy, there were very clear signs that they were always kind of struggling to find that combination of the starting 11 or 12 till like 3 or 4 or 5 games into the tournament, and by then it's already too late, and now you're suddenly under the pump and having to chop and change too much to try and find that ideal combination, and that pressure is always on you, and the first people who are on the chopping block are always those uncapped players, and you want to try someone else. So unless someone comes in and makes an instant impact, like for example say Rajat Patidar did a few years ago, unless it's that level of an impact, I don't think it's easy for youngsters in a franchise like RCB traditionally. So I'm hoping we are able to deviate away from that in this coming seasons under Kohli's leadership, and we are able to tweak things around a little bit. Right, so that brings us to the end of this video, I guess. So just in summary, just to share my final couple of thoughts, I guess I look at this as a new chapter for the franchise, an exciting one, a bold one, in the sense that they have kind of moved away from the norm and what a common person thinks about RCB as a franchise. I guess star-studded, big names in the lineup, and it's all about the glitz and the glamour, and those big names kind of really pulling the crowds in. They have completely moved away from that. I think Virat Kohli obviously still is the attractor in chief there, I guess, when it comes to fan following. But besides that, it's all about individuals who can put their hand up and play their specific roles. And as I was saying earlier, right, I think the franchise is just hoping that the sum is greater than its parts. When all of these guys come together and all contribute those key 30-40 runs, those one or two tight overs in the middle, or that one key wicket here and there, I think they want all of that to kind of come together and bring those results for this franchise. Very, very interesting, very, very exciting to see the direction that this franchise goes in over the next 2-3 years. But again, like I said, they have made this decision. It's a conscious decision. So I really hope that they can stick with that philosophy for the next 2-3 years. And one way or another, I know fans will have very, very differing opinions on this. And again, like I said, I'm somewhere in the middle, I guess. I am not really against what this franchise has done. I'm actually very glad about the thought and the overall philosophy itself. I still feel like they could have done slightly better in terms of a couple of picks, bringing in a couple more key, linchpin kind of players, especially in the bowling. But look, not everyone, as I said, right, not everyone gets whatever they want in the auction, so there will always be a few compromises. But overall, I think we've put together a very, very solid squad. So I think it's time for us as fans to back this franchise as we always do. I don't think that necessarily changes ever. So we will continue doing that. But I think there are probably hints that this could be a quietly, simmering underneath kind of a team, which surprises a lot of pundits as well, right? If folks have had a chance to listen to some of the experts and the pundits, not a whole lot of them were impressed with RCB's auction in general, and I get a sense of why that is. But again, not everyone follows the franchise as closely as some of us fans do. And again, this management group, they're there for a reason. Whatever we as fans can think about it, they've probably thought through every single scenario a million times more than we have. And they have the right kind of statistics and data to back their thesis up as well. So I really hope that we can continue, backing the management and backing this franchise, which we will do. We'll all come together once the season gets underway. There is no better sight, I think, in Indian cricket than watching RCB playing at the Chinnaswamy Stadium and the kind of support that they get, and the way the fans get behind the franchise. That is absolutely heartening to see. So I really hope that this team can kind of build on that and really do some wonders. Let's see, time will tell. Right, that brings us to the end of this video. Once again, thank you so much everyone for tuning in. I really appreciate all the support that I'm continuing to get for this content that I'm putting out. Again, it's all content that comes from the heart. And like I said, anything RCB related, I'm always more than excited to talk about it. But it's not just RCB. I try and cover other franchises, and not just IPL or franchise cricket, but the Indian cricket team as well. So I will continue to do my best to try and get my thoughts across as much as possible. But let me know in the comments, what do you think of RCB's overall performance in the auction? Do you think we have a good enough team to bring that first title home? Are there any players that you would have loved seeing in RCB colors, and how much would you rate RCB's auction overall out of 10? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to share this video with your friends as well. Please do subscribe to the channel if you haven't. This is Shravan signing off from Willow and Leather once more. I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.